3 months had passed since the demonstration. The Galactic Military Academy had changed in ways both subtle and profound. The most obvious change was in Training Hall 7, which had been converted into a dedicated space for human combat techniques. The hall was different from the other training facilities. Instead of advanced targeting systems and energy weapons, it contained simple training dummies, practice weapons, and a lot of empty space. Daeho stood at the front of the hall, facing 30 students from 12 different species. Hyunwoo was among them, his massive frame looking out of place among the training mats designed for smaller species. The Valkyrie warrior had not missed a single class. "Today we practice the fundamental stance," Daeho announced. "The same fundamental stance I have practiced every day for 35 years. A young Torvan cadet, her wings folded against her back, raised a hand. "Master Kim, we have been practicing this stance for 3 months. When do we learn to fight?" Daeho smiled patiently. "You are learning to fight. Fighting begins with perfect control of your own body. If you cannot control yourself, you cannot control your weapon. If you cannot control your weapon, you cannot control the fight." He walked among the students, adjusting postures. "Wider stance, Cadet Haewon. Your balance is still too forward." He moved to a Krellin student whose bony plates made certain positions difficult. "Compensate for your armor weight. Feel where your center of gravity actually is, not where you think it should be." Hyunwoo held his stance perfectly, but Daeho could see the slight tremor in his legs. The Valkyrie was strong, but this kind of precise muscular control was new to him. "Good," Daeho said. "Your form has improved significantly." "It still feels unnatural," Hyunwoo admitted. "It will for another 6 months," Daeho replied. "After a year, it will feel normal. After 2 years, it will feel natural. After 5 years, you will not remember any other way to stand." The training continued for another hour. To an outside observer, it would have looked boring. The students simply held positions, shifted weight, practiced breathing. There were no dramatic strikes, no weapons clashing, no combat at all. Just endless repetition of basic movements. But the students were learning. Young Soo Nam, a human cadet who had started training under Daeho since arriving at the academy, had progressed the fastest. Not because he was naturally talented, but because he understood patience. He had grown up on Earth learning these same techniques. After formal training ended, several students stayed behind to practice. This happened more and more often. They were beginning to understand that mastery came from personal dedication, not just class time. Hyunwoo approached Daeho as the hall emptied. "May I ask you something?" "Always. I have been thinking about what you said. About humans learning to find weaknesses because you had to." The Valkyrie's voice was thoughtful. "I fought in 12 major conflicts. I was decorated 7 times for bravery, but I always relied on my strength and my weapons. I never truly studied my enemies. I just hit them harder until they stopped. And it worked," Daeho pointed out. "You are an exceptional warrior. But what if I had faced an enemy I could not simply overpower? What if I had fought someone like you, who studied weaknesses instead of relying on strength?" Hyunwoo looked down at his hands. "I would have lost. Not because I was weak, but because I only knew one way to fight." Daeho nodded slowly. "That is wisdom. True wisdom is understanding your own limitations." The next day, Daeho received an unexpected visitor. Admiral Taemin Cho of the Galactic Defense Fleet arrived at the Academy without ceremony. He was human, one of only 15 humans to hold flag rank in the Galactic military. His presence drew attention immediately. "Instructor Kim," the Admiral said, meeting Daeho in his quarters, "I have been reading reports about your demonstration. Very interesting reports. I merely showed what human techniques can do, Admiral. You did more than that." Taemin pulled up a holographic display. "This is a recording from the Outer Rim frontier. Last week, a research station was attacked by raiders using experimental shield technology. Our security forces could not penetrate the shields with conventional weapons. The raiders were going to escape. The hologram showed armored figures retreating toward a ship, energy shields glowing around them. One of our security officers, a human named Bo-Ra Kang, had studied traditional Korean sword techniques before joining the military. She grabbed a maintenance blade, just simple steel, and engaged the raiders. The hologram shifted to show a small figure moving between the armored raiders with incredible precision. She disabled all 6 of them in under a minute. Cut through their shields exactly the way you cut through Hyunwoo's. Found the gaps, made precise strikes to disable without killing. Daeho watched the recording with interest. Bora's technique was good, though he could see small improvements that could be made. The raiders are now in custody, Taemin continued, and every security commander in the fleet is asking the same question. Why are we not teaching these techniques to all our personnel? It takes years to master, Daeho cautioned. These are not skills you can learn in a few weeks of basic training. I understand, but even basic proficiency would be valuable. The Admiral leaned forward. I want to establish a program. Human combat instructors throughout the fleet, teaching precision techniques to any species willing to learn. And I want you to design it, Daeho considered. It would require significant changes to training doctrine. Changes we should have made a long time ago. Taemin smiled. Humans have been in the galactic community for 50 years. We have always been seen as the weak species. Good at engineering, good at administration, but not real warriors. It is time to change that perception. Not by becoming stronger, but by showing that strength is not the only path to victory. That evening, Daeho held an informal gathering in his quarters. Jiwoo, Minsu, Youngsu, and several other human cadets attended, along with Hyunwoo and a few of his non-human students. The Admiral wants to expand the program, Daeho announced. Human combat techniques taught throughout the fleet. Jiwoo grinned. It is about time. Do you know how frustrating it has been watching everyone assume humans cannot fight? We have been fighting longer than most species have had space travel. Fighting and surviving, Youngsu added. That is what we are good at. Taking a bad situation and finding a way through it. Minsu, who had been quiet, finally spoke. Will it change anything? Will other species really respect us more if they learn our techniques? Hyunwoo answered before Daeho could. Yes, I can speak from experience. 3 months ago, I thought humans were interesting but weak. I assumed your survival was luck or clever politics. He gestured to Daeho. Now I train under a human master. I practice techniques developed by your species. And I understand that what I mistook for weakness was actually careful, deliberate efficiency. You are not weak. You are precise. There is a difference. The galaxy is learning this, Daeho said. Slowly, but they are learning. Each person we train becomes a teacher. Each demonstration opens more eyes. It will take time, but attitudes are changing. Over the following weeks, the change became more visible. Human cadets, once relegated to support roles, were now sought after for tactical positions. Commanders wanted their analytical approach, their tendency to study enemies rather than just fight them. In the academy combat simulations, human students began placing higher in the rankings, not through superior firepower or stronger shields, but through better positioning, more efficient use of resources, and the ability to find and exploit weaknesses in enemy formations. Young Su-nam became the first human cadet to defeat a Velkari opponent in unarmed combat trials. The Velkari was twice his size and 3 times his strength, but Young-Su used joint locks and pressure points, turning the opponent's strength against him. The larger warrior tapped out in under 2 minutes. The victory was not just Young-Su's. It was a victory for every human who had been dismissed as too weak to be a real warrior. Daeho watched from the observation deck as his students, human and non-human alike, trained together. They were learning from each other. The Velkari students were developing better precision. The human students were learning to leverage the unique advantages of working alongside stronger species. Hyunwoo joined him at the observation window. I owe you an apology, the Velkari said. You already apologized months ago. That apology was for insulting you. This one is for my species. Hyunwoo watched the training below. The Velkari have been part of the galactic community for 800 years. We have fought in countless wars, trained millions of warriors, and in all that time, we never thought to truly study our enemies. We just assumed that strength would be enough. He turned to Daeho. Humans have been here for only 50 years. But you brought knowledge that took you 3,000 years to develop, knowledge that we should have been seeking all along. We were arrogant. We thought our way was the only way. We were wrong. Your way works, Daeho said gently. You have won many battles with strength and courage. But how many could we have won with fewer casualties if we had also used precision and strategy? How many lives could we have saved? Hyunwoo's voice carried a weight of regret. You humans, you fight like every life matters because for you every life does matter. The demonstration ended, but its effects spread like ripples across water. Within hours, every cadet and instructor at the Galactic Military Academy had heard about what happened in the arena. By evening, the story had reached the outer stations. By the next morning, military commands across 3 sectors were requesting detailed reports. Daeho sat in his quarters, cleaning his blade as he always did after use. A knock at the door interrupted the familiar ritual. "Come in," he called. Hyunwoo entered, ducking his head to fit through the human-sized doorway. He carried his carved shield under one arm. "May I speak with you?" "Of course." Daeho gestured to a reinforced chair designed for larger species. Hyunwoo sat, the chair creaking under his weight. For a moment he said nothing, just looked at the shield in his hands. The carved Korean characters seemed to stare back at him. Finally he spoke. "I have been thinking about what you said, about humans learning precision because you had no choice. Yes? I want to understand." Hyunwoo leaned forward. "My people, the Velkari, we evolved on a world with gravity twice that of your Earth. We grew strong because we had to be strong just to stand. Our predators were massive. Our prey was dangerous, so we became bigger, stronger, tougher." He tapped his scaled chest. "Our entire military doctrine is built around overwhelming force. Hit hard, hit fast, break through enemy defenses." Daeho nodded, listening. "But your people," Hyunwoo continued, "you went the opposite direction. You became weaker than your predators, smaller, slower. How did you survive?" Daeho set down his cleaning cloth. "We became smart, and we became precise." He stood and walked to his personal display, activating a hologram of Earth. "On my world, the most dangerous predators had claws, teeth, venom, speed. Humans had none of these. A single great cat could kill the strongest human easily. A pack of wolves would overwhelm any human group." The hologram shifted, showing early humans hunting. "So we learned to make tools. Not just simple tools, but specialized ones. We studied animals for generations. We learned where their organs were, which arteries carried the most blood, where the spine connected to the skull." His finger traced lines on the holographic animal. "We could not kill with strength, so we killed with knowledge." Hyunwoo watched the display intently. "We developed spears with specific points for specific prey. Arrows designed to penetrate exactly deep enough to reach vital organs, but not so deep they would get stuck. Knives shaped to slide between ribs." Daeho pulled up another image, this one showing ancient human warfare. "And when we fought each other, we learned even more. We studied armor and found its weak points. We developed techniques to bypass shields. We learned that a small cut in the right place was better than a powerful strike in the wrong place." The hologram showed a sequence of combat moves, each one targeting joints, nerve clusters, arteries. "For 3,000 years, my ancestors refined these techniques. Sons learned from fathers. Students learned from masters. Each generation added to the knowledge. We documented everything. We tested everything. We practiced endlessly." "That is why your control is so precise," Hyunwoo said, understanding dawning. "You have had 3 millennia of accumulated knowledge about exactly where and how to strike." "Exactly." Daeho sat back down. "Your people fought enemies with strength. Our people fought enemies with information. Both approaches work, but they create very different fighting styles." There was another knock at the door. This time it was Instructor Velmoth, accompanied by several other faculty members. "May we enter?" the spider-like creature asked. Daeho's small quarters quickly filled with instructors from various species. They all wanted to know more about human combat techniques. A Torvan flight instructor was the first to speak. "I watched you move in the arena. Your strikes were not random. You were following some kind of pattern." "Yes," Daeho confirmed. "In human martial arts, we have what we call forms or patterns. They are sequences of movements practiced thousands of times until they become automatic. Each movement flows into the next. This builds muscle memory and perfect control." "Could you teach this?" Velmoth asked. "Could other species learn these techniques?" Daeho considered. "The physical techniques, yes. Any species with arms and hands could learn the basic movements. But the philosophy behind them might be harder. Human martial arts are not just about fighting. They are about discipline, patience, and understanding weakness." "You understanding weakness?" A Krellin weapons master covered in bony plates seemed confused. "Why would warriors study weakness?" "Because everyone has weaknesses," Daeho replied. "Every species, every individual, every defensive system." He gestured to Hyunwoo's shield. "That shield is incredibly strong. But it has gaps. Not flaws, just inherent limitations in its design. Understanding those limitations is how you defeat it. He stood and began to pace, his teaching instincts taking over. Human military doctrine is built around finding and exploiting weaknesses. We study enemy armor to find gaps. We study enemy tactics to find patterns. We study enemy psychology to find fears. We are not strong enough to win through force alone, so we win through understanding. Hyunwoo set his shield on the floor. Then teach us. Teach us how humans think about combat. Over the next hour, Daeho gave an impromptu lesson in human warfare philosophy. He explained how humans use terrain to negate enemy advantages, how they use deception to make strong enemies waste their strength on empty positions, how they studied enemy communication to predict movements before they happened. On Earth, he explained, we have a saying, know your enemy and know yourself, and you need not fear the result of 100 battles. A human general wrote that 2,500 years ago. It is still true today. So Min-han arrived during the lesson, having been called by Velmoth. She brought her analysis of Daeho's sword. I used a high-resolution molecular scanner, she explained, projecting data onto the wall. The edge of this blade is irregular at the microscopic level. In some places, it is only 15 molecules thick. The folding process created millions of tiny serrations, too small to see but perfect for finding weak points in composite materials. She pulled up a comparison. A modern combat knife, even a good one, has an edge around 500 molecules thick. It is uniform and strong, but it cannot do what this blade does. The ancient forging technique created something that modern manufacturing cannot replicate, because modern manufacturing aims for uniformity. This blade's strength comes from its irregularity. The instructors examined the data with fascination. Technology they had assumed was obsolete turned out to have properties their modern equipment lacked. I want to learn, Hyunwoo announced suddenly. I want you to teach me human combat techniques. Other instructors murmured agreement. Daeho bowed. I would be honored. But I must warn you, it will be difficult. Human techniques require patience. You cannot master them quickly through strength or natural ability. You must practice the same movement thousands of times until your body knows it better than your mind does. How long did it take you to learn the strike you used on my shield? Hyunwoo asked. Daeho thought back. I first learned the basic cut when I was 7 years old. I practiced it every day for 30 years before I felt I had truly mastered it. Even now, I still practice. There is always room for improvement. The room fell silent. 30 years to master a single technique. To many of the assembled instructors who relied on natural physical advantages, this seemed excessive. But they had seen the results. I will practice for 30 years if that is what it takes, Hyunwoo said firmly. I have lived for 200 years. I can afford to invest 30 more in learning something truly valuable. Velmoth's multiple eyes gleamed with interest. I propose we add human combat techniques to the academy curriculum. Optional at first for those interested, but available to any species willing to learn. Daeho felt a surge of pride, though he kept his expression neutral. I will teach anyone who wishes to learn, but I cannot promise quick results. Human methods are slow. They require dedication. Then we will dedicate ourselves, Hyunwoo replied. He looked at his carved shield again. You carved your name into this. A permanent reminder of what I learned today. Now I want to learn how you did it. Not just the physical technique, but the philosophy behind it. The patience. The precision. The understanding of weakness. As the meeting broke up and instructors filed out, Jiwoo appeared at the door. She had been waiting outside, not wanting to interrupt. Teacher, she said, using the Korean term with respect. I heard what happened. The whole academy is talking about it. Daeho smiled. I did not intend to create such a stir. But you did. And now things will change, she grinned. Humans are not just the small weak species anymore. Now we are the species that spent 3,000 years getting really good at finding weak spots. Daeho laughed quietly. I suppose that is one way to put it. Outside his window, Station Prime continued its slow rotation. Tomorrow he would begin teaching, sharing 3 millennia of accumulated human knowledge with species that had never needed it before. It would be interesting to see what they could do with it. For a long moment, nobody moved. The arena remained frozen in shocked silence. 5,000 spectators stared at the impossible thing they had just witnessed. A primitive steel blade had carved through a molecular disruption shield without triggering a single alarm. The name carved into the surface seemed to mock every assumption they had made about human weakness. Hyunwoo knelt beside his shield, running his clawed fingers over the carved characters. His diagnostic scanner showed green across the board. No breach detected, no impact registered, no alarm triggered, and yet the evidence was carved into the composite backing in lines so clean they might have been etched by a laser. How? The word came out barely above a whisper. Deho stood quietly, waiting. He had learned long ago that silence was often the best teacher. Velmoth scuttled forward, multiple eyes examining the shield from different angles. The energy matrix is completely intact. According to every sensor, nothing has touched this shield, but clearly something has. The instructor's voice carried confusion and fascination in equal measure. This contradicts all our understanding of molecular disruption technology, a voice called out from the observation deck. Run a molecular analysis of the cuts. Velmoth produced a handheld scanner and ran it along one of the carved lines. The device beeped, displaying data that made the instructor's eyes widen. The cut goes through 17 layers of composite material. Clean separation at the molecular level. No burning, no tearing, just separation. Velmoth looked up at Deho. What is your blade made of? Steel, Deho replied simply. Folded steel. My ancestor forged it 340 years ago using techniques that date back 3,000 years. Impossible, Hyunwoo said, but his voice lacked conviction. The evidence literally carved into his shield said otherwise. Deho gestured to the shield. May I explain? Velmoth nodded, waving its forward limbs to indicate the arena floor was his. Deho walked to the center, and the arena lights automatically brightened around him. 5,000 pairs of eyes focused on the small human with the ancient weapon. Your technology is impressive, Deho began, his voice calm and clear. The molecular disruption field is a marvel of engineering, but it is designed to counter modern weapons. High-velocity projectiles, energy weapons, explosive impacts. He drew his sword again, holding it up so the light played along its edge. This blade is none of those things. He walked to a training dummy at the edge of the arena, one designed to simulate Velkari anatomy. My species evolved on a world where we were not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most dangerous. He took a stance beside the dummy. We had no claws, no armor, no venom. Anything that wanted to eat us was better equipped for killing than we were. The sword moved in a slow demonstration cut, touching the dummy's neck joint. So we learned. We studied. We spent thousands of years discovering exactly where to cut, which joints were vulnerable, where nerves clustered, how bone connected to muscle. Another touch, this time at the elbow joint. We could not overpower our predators, so we learned to disable them with precision. Deho sheathed his sword and picked up a training knife from a nearby rack. We developed metallurgy because we needed edges that would stay sharp. We created folding techniques because we needed blades that would not break. He held the training knife up to the light. A modern blade like this is made from a single piece of metal. Strong but simple. He set it down and drew his sword again. This blade was folded 256 times during forging. That creates millions of microscopic layers. Each layer is slightly harder or softer than the one beside it. He ran his thumb carefully along the flat of the blade. This gives the edge properties that your sensors cannot detect. It is sharp at a molecular level, but it is not uniform. The irregularity is what allows it to cut materials that should be too hard for steel. In the cadet section, So Min Han sat up straighter. She was a human engineering student, one of only 3 in the entire academy. I need to examine that blade under a microscope, she muttered. Her Velkari classmate Sung Ho looked at her. What do you mean molecular level sharpness? So Min pulled out her datapad and started sketching. Modern blades are sharp, but at the microscopic level they are relatively uniform. They have a cutting edge that is maybe a few hundred molecules thick. But if what he is saying is true, a folded steel blade like that might have an edge only a few molecules thick in places, with irregularities that act like microscopic saws. She looked up at the arena. It would be able to find weak points in composite materials and literally pull them apart at the molecular level. On the arena floor, Deho continued his explanation. Your shield's energy field detects velocity and mass. It is designed to stop fast-moving threats. But I was not moving fast. I was moving precisely. He demonstrated with a slow swing through the air, just below the threshold that triggers the field. My people practiced this kind of control for 3 millennia. We had to. We could not waste energy on powerful strikes. We only had the strength for precise ones. Hyunwoo had been listening intently. Now he stood, his full height towering over Daeho, but there was no mockery in his voice now. Only curiosity. You are saying your species developed these techniques because you were weak? Yes, Daeho said without shame. We were prey animals who became predators through intelligence and practice. We learned to study our enemies, to find their weaknesses, to strike with precision instead of power. He gestured to the carved shield. Your people evolved strength and size. You developed technology that assumes your enemy will attack with force, but force is not the only way to win. He walked back to the shield and knelt beside it. This shield stops powerful impacts, but it does not stop careful, controlled contact. The energy field has gaps, tiny spaces where the detection grid does not cover. They are only a few millimeters wide and they shift constantly as the field cycles. He traced a finger through the air above the shield, following an invisible path. But if you watch long enough, learn the pattern, and control your blade precisely enough, you can find those gaps. Show us, Velmuth said suddenly. Show us how you found the pattern. Daeho nodded. He activated the shield again, and the energy field hummed back to life. Watch the shimmer, he said. It is not uniform. See how it pulses? He pointed to a section of the field. There, the pulse creates a gap every 3 seconds. It lasts for 0.02 seconds before the next pulse fills it. The crowd strained to see what he was pointing at. Most could not perceive any gap at all. And there, Daeho continued, pointing to another section. Another gap, this one in the detection grid itself. It is where 2 field generators overlap imperfectly. The gap is 4 millimeters wide. Hyunwoo stared at the shield he had used for 70 years. He had never noticed any of this. Your technology is not flawed, Daeho said, standing. It is excellent technology. But every system has limitations. Every defense has gaps. My people learned to find them. Not because we are better warriors than you, but because we had to be more careful warriors than you. He looked up at the thousands of watching cadets. Strength is valuable. Technology is valuable, but precision and patience are also valuable. And sometimes the oldest methods work because they were developed by people who had no other choice but to make them work. Jiwoo smiled in the stands. She had heard variations of this lesson before, but it never got old. Hyunwoo picked up his carved shield, studying it with new eyes. I have been an instructor here for 70 years. I have trained thousands of warriors, and I have never seen anything like this. He looked at Daeho with something that might have been respect. I owe you an apology. I underestimated your species. I underestimated you. No apology necessary, Daeho replied. How could you know what you had never seen? But Hyunwoo shook his head. A true warrior should never assume. I assumed weakness based on appearance. That was foolish. He held up the shield. I will keep this. As a reminder, the crowd began to murmur, conversations breaking out across the arena. The world had just shifted slightly. Humans were not just the small, weak species anymore. They were the species that had spent 3,000 years learning how to turn weakness into deadly precision. In the observation deck, Instructor Kwan Ho collected his winnings from the betting pool and smiled. The main arena at the Galactic Military Academy could hold 5,000 spectators. By midday, every seat was filled. Cadets from 47 different species crowded together, their excited chatter creating a noise that echoed off the high ceiling. This was the most anticipated event of the semester. Though not for the reasons Daeho might have hoped. They had come to watch a human fail. The arena floor was a circle of reinforced composite, designed to withstand the heaviest weapons testing. At one end stood Hyunwoo Park, resplendent in his formal instructor armor. His molecular disruption shield was mounted on his left arm, its surface gleaming under the bright lights. His plasma battle axe rested against his shoulder. He looked every bit the legendary warrior he was. At the other end stood Daeho Kim, wearing simple black training clothes. His sword remained sheathed at his side. To the watching crowd, the contrast could not have been more obvious. Hyunwoo looked like a warrior from a recruitment poster. Daeho looked like someone who had wandered into the wrong building. Instructor Velmuth descended from the observation deck on a silk line, landing gracefully in the center of the arena. The spider-like creature raised 4 of its 8 limbs for silence. The crowd quieted. Today's demonstration, Velmuth announced, its voice amplified throughout the arena. We'll showcase the difference between historical weapons and modern military technology. Senior Instructor Hyunwoo has graciously agreed to provide a learning opportunity for our newest faculty member. In the cadet section, Jiwoo sat next to Minsu Choi, a human cadet who had arrived at the academy 3 months earlier. Minsu leaned over and whispered, "Why does everyone think this is going to be a disaster? Do they not know who Daeho is?" "They know he is human," Jiwoo replied quietly. "To them, that is enough. But you studied under him on Earth, right? What is he really capable of?" Jiwoo kept her eyes on the arena floor. "You will see." Velmoth continued explaining the rules. "This will be a standard demonstration match. Non-lethal engagement. The first to score 3 touches wins. However, Instructor Hyunwoo has suggested a modification." The creature gestured to the Velkari instructor. "Please explain." Hyunwoo stepped forward, his massive form commanding attention. "I do not wish to injure our new colleague. Instead, I propose a simple demonstration. I will place my shield on the ground. The human may attempt to damage it using his blade. This will show everyone the effectiveness of modern defensive technology." The crowd murmured with approval. This was even better than a fight. They would get to see exactly how useless primitive weapons were against current military equipment. "I will not interfere or defend," Hyunwoo continued. "I will simply let him strike the shield as many times as he wishes. When he is finished and realizes his weapon cannot harm it, we will proceed to discuss proper armament for academy instructors." He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Does this seem fair, Instructor Kim?" Daeho bowed slightly. "Very generous. Thank you." Hyunwoo walked to the center of the arena and placed his shield on the ground. He activated it with a touch and the molecular disruption field hummed to life. A faint shimmer surrounded the shield, visible as a distortion in the air. The field would detect any fast-moving object and create a counterforce to deflect it. It was technology that had taken the Velkari 2 centuries to perfect. "This shield," Hyunwoo announced, walking in a slow circle around it so everyone could see, "uses a molecular disruption field. It can stop projectiles moving at up to 15,000 meters per second. The physical backing is composite material rated to withstand 200,000 pounds of force." He tapped it with one claw, producing a dull thunk. Even if somehow the blade penetrated the energy field, which it cannot, the physical shield itself is virtually indestructible. Daeho approached slowly, his hands empty. The crowd leaned forward. Some cadets in the upper section stood for a better view. "Would you like protective equipment?" Hyunwoo asked, barely containing his amusement. "The field discharge can be uncomfortable when it deflects a weapon." "No, thank you," Daeho said. He knelt beside the shield, examining it carefully. His fingers traced along its edge, not quite touching the energy field. His eyes moved across its surface with intense focus, as if reading something invisible to everyone else. "What is he doing?" Minsu whispered. "Memorizing," Jiwoo replied. "Memorizing what?" "Everything." Hyunwoo watched with growing impatience. "Take your time, human. Study it well. When you are ready to admit defeat, simply say so. There is no shame in recognizing superior technology." Daeho stood and stepped back 3 paces. He drew his sword in one smooth motion. The blade caught the arena lights, and for just a moment the edge seemed to shimmer with an inner light. It was an effect of the folding process, the way millions of microscopic layers reflected light at slightly different angles. "Whenever you are ready," Hyunwoo said, "strike as hard as you can." In the observation deck, faculty members from various species watched with interest. A Torvan instructor had started a betting pool. The current odds were 50 to 1 that the human would give up without making contact, 100 to 1 that he would actually damage the shield. Only one person had bet on Daeho. Instructor Kwan Hoseo, a human engineering teacher, had quietly placed a substantial wager. When asked why, he had simply said, "I know what human metallurgy can do." Down in the arena, Daeho took a stance. It was subtle, barely noticeable. His weight shifted forward onto the balls of his feet. His breathing slowed. The sword rose to shoulder height, the blade parallel to the ground. "This should be quick," someone in the crowd said. "Poor human does not even know how to—" The sword moved. It was not a wild swing or a powerful chop. It was a precise, controlled cut that seemed to flow like water. The blade descended toward the shield at an angle that seemed almost casual. There was no flash of deflected energy. No discharge. No sound of metal on metal. The blade touched the shield's surface and continued through, as if the energy field did not exist. A thin line appeared on the composite backing. The crowd went silent. Hyunwoo stared. "What? How did you—" But Daeho was already moving again. His sword rose and fell in a second cut, this one perpendicular to the first. Again, no energy discharge. Again, a perfect line carved into the supposedly indestructible surface. "The field should have activated," Hyunwoo said, more to himself than anyone else. "The sensors should have detected a third cut, a fourth." Daeho moved around the shield in a slow circle, his blade rising and falling with mechanical precision. Each strike was placed exactly where he intended. Not once did the energy field react. Not once did the shield's alarm sound. The crowd had stopped breathing. Belmoth scuttled closer, its multiple eyes wide. "This is not possible. The field should register any object moving faster than—" "He is not moving fast enough to trigger it," Jiwoo said from the stands, though her voice was too quiet for anyone except Minsu to hear. "He is finding the gaps in the detection grid and placing his blade through them. The field only activates for high-speed impacts. His control is so precise that he is moving just below the threshold." Minsu stared at her. How is that even possible? The gap between triggering and not triggering has to be incredibly narrow. "Exactly," Jiwoo said, "and he has been practicing for 30 years. On the arena floor, Daeho made his 17th and final cut. Then he stepped back, sheathed his sword, and bowed to Hyunwoo. The Velkari instructor looked down at his shield. Carved into its surface, in perfect Korean characters, was a name, Daeho Daeho. The human had signed his work. The transport shuttle touched down on Station Prime with barely a whisper. Daeho Kim gathered his belongings, which consisted of a single bag and a long wrapped bundle that he carried with great care. Other passengers glanced at him as they departed. Most of them were twice his size, belonging to species that had evolved on high-gravity worlds or had natural armor plating. Daeho was simply human, standing at an unremarkable 5 feet 9 inches, with black hair and calm eyes that took in everything around him. The Galactic Military Academy sprawled across the entire southern section of Station Prime. It was enormous, designed to accommodate species of vastly different sizes and needs. Daeho walked through the main corridor, past groups of cadets who stopped their conversations to stare at him. He was used to this. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community, and most species viewed them as physically weak and unremarkable. A tall figure approached him from the training hall entrance. This was Hyunwoo Park, though the name was merely a convenience for record-keeping. Hyunwoo was Velkari, a reptilian species that stood over 8 feet tall with scales that shimmered like polished stone. He had been an instructor at the academy for 70 years and had fought in 12 major conflicts. His reputation was legendary. "You must be the human," Hyunwoo said, his voice carrying across the corridor. Several cadets stopped to listen. "I am Hyunwoo Park, Senior Weapons Instructor. I will be showing you around today." Daeho bowed slightly, a gesture of respect from his culture. "Thank you for taking the time. I am honored to be here." Hyunwoo's eyes fixed on the wrapped bundle Daeho carried. "What is that?" "My weapon," Daeho replied simply. A low rumble came from Hyunwoo's chest, the Velkari equivalent of a laugh. "Come, let me show you the armory. We have proper weapons here." The armory was impressive. Walls lined with plasma rifles, energy swords, molecular disruptors, and weapons whose purposes Daeho could only guess at. Hyunwoo walked to a display case and removed a massive battle axe. The edge glowed with contained plasma that could cut through reinforced titanium like paper. "This is a standard Velkari combat axe," Hyunwoo explained. "Plasma-edged, gyroscopically balanced, capable of storing enough energy for 50 full-power strikes." He hefted it easily in one hand. "What did you bring?" Daeho carefully unwrapped his bundle. Inside was a sword, simple and unadorned. The blade was folded steel, approximately 30 inches long, with a handle wrapped in worn black fabric. It looked ancient because it was... This blade had been in his family for 12 generations. Hyunwoo stared at it. Then he laughed, a full booming sound that echoed through the armory. "That is your weapon, steel? Do you know what year this is, human?" Other instructors had gathered, drawn by the commotion. A Torvan flight instructor leaned in to examine the sword. "Is this a historical piece?" "For display?" "No," Daeho said quietly. "This is what I use." "You cannot be serious," said Instructor Velmoth, a spider-like creature who coordinated combat training. "That blade would not penetrate modern armor. It would not even scratch a basic energy shield." Daeho said nothing. He had learned long ago that words rarely convinced anyone. Only demonstration worked. Hyunwoo set down his axe and picked up a shield from the weapons rack. It was a molecular disruption shield, standard issue for Valkyrie military. When activated, it projected an energy field that could deflect plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, and most physical weapons. The shield itself was made of composite materials designed to withstand incredible force. "This shield," Hyunwoo announced, holding it up for everyone to see, "is rated to withstand direct hits from anti-vehicle weapons. The energy matrix will stop anything moving faster than a certain threshold. The physical backing is reinforced composite, harder than any natural material." He looked at Daeho with something resembling pity. "Your primitive blade would not even scratch it." A small crowd had formed now. Cadets pressed against the armory windows watching the exchange. Among them was Jiwoo Lee, one of only 15 humans currently enrolled at the academy. She had studied under Daeho before coming here, and she knew what he was capable of. Her Valkyrie classmate Tae Yang nudged her. "Is that really your species' idea of a weapon?" Tae Yang asked. "No offense, but it looks like something from a museum." Jiwoo smiled slightly. "Just watch." Inside the armory, Hyunwoo was warming to his subject. "I do not wish to embarrass you, human, but perhaps you should use one of our training weapons instead. Something more appropriate for actual combat. I appreciate your concern," Daeho replied, his tone remaining respectful. "But I am comfortable with what I have." "Very well," Hyunwoo said. He turned to Velmoth. "Let us arrange a demonstration. Tomorrow in the main arena, the human can show us what his ancient weapon can do against modern defenses. It will be educational for the cadets." The way he said educational made it clear he expected Daeho to fail spectacularly. It would be a lesson in why primitive weapons had no place in modern warfare. Daeho simply nodded. "What time would you prefer?" "Midday," Hyunwoo said. "Full faculty and cadet attendance. We will make it an official demonstration." He was already imagining how he would explain the importance of proper military equipment after the human's inevitable failure. Word spread quickly through the academy. By evening, everyone knew about the challenge. The human instructor with his ancient sword would face off against senior instructor Hyunwoo's modern shield. Bets were already being placed in the cadet barracks, though they were not about whether Daeho would fail. They were about how quickly. In his assigned quarters, Daeho carefully cleaned his blade with traditional oil and a soft cloth. He had performed this ritual thousands of times. The sword had been forged by his ancestor using techniques that had been refined over 3 millennia. The steel had been folded hundreds of times, creating millions of microscopic layers that gave the edge properties that modern metallurgists still struggled to fully understand. He did not blame Hyunwoo for his skepticism. How could the Valkyrie understand? They had evolved on a high-gravity world where strength was survival. Their technology had developed along different paths. They had never needed to make a weak species dangerous through pure skill. Humans had no natural armor, no claws, no venom, no size advantage. What humans had was time and necessity. 3,000 years of warfare had taught them how to kill things bigger and stronger than themselves. They had learned where to cut, how to move, when to strike. They had turned weakness into precision and desperation into art. Daeho finished cleaning his blade and set it aside. Tomorrow would be interesting. He had no intention of embarrassing Hyunwoo, but he would show them what humans were truly capable of, not through speeches or boasts, but through demonstration. Outside his window, Station Prime rotated slowly against the backdrop of stars. Somewhere in those stars was Earth, the small blue world that had produced a species too stubborn to accept its limitations. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn something new about humans. Tomorrow, they would understand that sometimes the oldest weapons were old for a reason. They worked.